This sitting is resumed.
Speaker, recommit of government notices.
Speaker,
Honorable
beg to give
Member for St. Joseph.
notice of the resolution to grant the sum of $103,949,914 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of government to supplement the estimates 2020 to 2021 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 11 of 2020 to 2021.
Government business. Revert business. Order number 2.
Alderman for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to say a few words in this debate, sir. Conscious that we have gone through and listened to some very spirited contributions from alderman members, which really just leaves me to wrap up this debate, sir, and to give thanks to all the members, but certainly to the members of the public, for allowing this government, sir, to be able to manage the affairs of the country at the most extraordinary time. But before we get into my substantive contribution, sir, I really want to first thank my wife and my son, sir, because the last 10 weeks, sir, whilst we've been preparing these estimates virtually, and certainly with the national pause that was instituted in February, whilst I was physically at home, sir, it was almost as if I wasn't there because we were meeting night and day. And I really want to thank my wife and my son, sir, for their patience. Because without that support, sir, it would not be possible to be able to put this together. I also want to thank certainly the officers of the Ministry of Finance for particularly the budget section, sir, because whilst these things we take these things for granted, sometimes by way of process, persons have had to do this similarly, sir, having to deal with their own domestic situations at a time, particularly surveying, in trying to assess critically what the performance of the economy has been and trying to determine where we would go and the notice has been given with respect to the resolution, which we will debate shortly. It's important that I express my gratitude to the officers, certainly of the ministry and particularly, sir, the budget section, for their extraordinary commitment in being up at night, sir, when we finish meeting with all of the ministries in trying to ensure that we can put together a program that is capable of responding to the needs of the country at this time. And it goes without saying, but I must also give thanks, sir, to the people of Christchurch East Central, because certainly for the last 3 months or so, given what we have been facing as a country, I have had to commit to doing my clinics by Zoom, which residents are already aware of, given the fact that we had community spread. And I really want to thank them for their patience, sir, in allowing me to be able to, I can't describe it as balance, sir, between dealing with family life, dealing with the affairs of the ministry, whilst at the same time responding to the needs of the constituents. And I really want to thank them for their patience. And as we conclude this process, I give them my commitment that we will get back to some of the regular programming, and they will certainly see a bit more of me post this process with respect to moving forward on a number of matters. Having said that, sir, I listened to some of the contributions of members, and I must admit, I listened to hear very carefully not what many may regard as a defense of our stewardship, but it really has demonstrated for me in listening to members how the impact that this pandemic has had certainly on all of our lives, sir, for the past year. And it really signaled to me, sir, through the contribution of our members, that the country can feel proud that this government, sir, has been able to work to keep this society, sir, together. And it almost, in listening, I sometimes get the impression, sir, that there may be some in the public space that may perceive that this has been an easy exercise for us to be able to do. That it is just a book of numbers that you put together, sir, on spreadsheets. Without recognizing that, like our preparations for coming to government, we have been very incisive with respect to what we provision for, because we understand that there are some very real needs of Barbadians that clearly will need to be met in the short term. And I'm happy that we have been able to make those provisions. Now, let me say at the outset, sir, that you would recall, sir, on April 1st last year, when in this very space, we did our first set of supplementaries to respond to what was clearly was going to be ahead of us. And I indicated to you and the House at that time, sir, that there was never a time before in my memory, and I'm sure a search of Hansard will show that there's never been a time when supplementaries were done on the very first day of the financial year. And having done that, sir, the Ministry of Finance went through an exercise with all the ministries to identify specific programs that we would suspend, sir, in order to ensure that monies were set aside to respond to the Ministry of Health and the other COVID-related matters in relation to the 2020-21 estimates for which the financial year will end in a few days. And we have gone through this process, sir, very diligently, without, the truth is, sir, a lot of fanfare. And I really, really, really want to thank my colleagues for the work that they have done in their ministries. I want to thank the financial controller, sir, across the different ministries for supplying the information to us in a timely manner. And whilst not everything has always gone, sir, as smoothly as we would like, we recognize that the Ministry of Finance has had to be a little more flexible with respect to how we provide finances. But as you would appreciate, sir, that in an environment where the economy was experiencing a lot of uncertainty, the management of cash flow obviously is critical. And so to the extent that we have determined the priorities for government in the coming financial year, I really want to impress upon Barbadians the importance, sir, as to why those protocols that we have put in place are perhaps, sir, more relevant for when you are at home and engaging in leisure activity as they would be for when you're visiting your workplace or any other place of business that you're engaging in. And that is important, sir, because what we have put together here, sir, in order to, having gone through a year of dealing with COVID-19, is really designed to get Barbados to a stage over certainly the next 6 months, in the first instance, until we can see two things happen, sir. That the world accelerates the implementation of the vaccine program, sir, which we hope that we will be able to get a certain level of herd immunity in Barbados, but certainly that across the world, that we can start to see the resumption of travel. And travel has to resume in the same way, sir, as we have been opening up the economy coming out of this lockdown. By the same token, travel globally has to resume, and it obviously will be predicated, sir, on the rollout of vaccines and the efficacy that they will have with respect to the minimization of the risk of transmission from human to human. And so therefore, whilst that will take some time globally, domestically, we have to do all that we can, sir, to ensure that those public health protocols are followed, sir, at home. At home, as you know, sir, in certain communities and districts in Barbados, home is not always physically where you sleep. Because, and I'll explain, sir. I'll explain. There are many communities, sir, where my aunt may live over there. I go with my grandmother there, sir, my uncle in the back, and I may traverse, and I live in my physical residence with my parents or whomever. And so you may frequent 3 or 4 physical structures, which is really home, because that's your family in that space. And therefore, we have to observe the fact that who we interact with in our spaces, sir, will have an impact on how this pandemic is managed domestically. And whilst I know that the public health protocols have changed recently with respect to being able to ensure that we contain the spread by looking at those clusters, it is important that when we go home, that the protocols are followed, sir, at home in our communities, taking account for the fact that many of us, sir, many of us, whether they're cousins, whether they're just friends from the district, sir, we treat home as a place of safety, and that we have to observe protocols at home, whether home is the 4 or 5 houses that you may frequent regularly and that everybody mixes up with one another, and not take anything at all for granted, sir. And I really want to impress upon Barbadians that we can get through this pandemic, we can get through this crisis. But we must work together, government and the people, because with the best will in the world, sir, the COVID-19 unit, certainly on the Royal Barbados Police Force, really can't really be expected to police our personal choices. And therefore, whilst they're there to give guidance with respect to the administering of the protocol, if we try to take shortcuts, sir, and do things at home differently from what we would do when we want to leave home to access goods and services, then in truth and fact, sir, we will be defeating ourselves. And I want to impress upon Barbadians that we will get through this together, but we must be as disciplined when we want to go to the supermarket or go to the doctor's office or go to any other place of business as we would in our very neighborhood, sir. And that, sir, is I cannot underscore how important that is for us being able to keep the economy open, keep people working, such that we can minimize, sir, the further reduction in economic activity, because we are making the assumption very clearly, sir, very plainly, that once we can get through the next 6 to 9 months, sir, to the end of this calendar year, that once we can see the resumption, and you will see, sir, the gradual resumption of travel globally, once the vaccine programs are rolled out, that we will be able to get back to a level of economic activity domestically that allows for more persons to get employed, sir, and therefore allow for families to once again be able to comfortably support their loved ones, and to start, sir, feeling a sense of comfort that they can honor their obligations as we go forward. I, sir, as an MP, and I know that all members in this place have been in constant communication with their constituents about the need, sir, to pay the bills, be able to support the family, sir, to put basic food on the table. And all of us in this place, sir, have had to respond in some form or fashion with respect to that. And the reality is that whilst the government and all of the NGOs have given UMS support, there's nothing like the pride and the one thing that I know that our constituents would always ask that they want a job, sir, because they really want to be able to support themselves and their families. And therefore, I'm asking all Barbadians, sir, that once we can follow the protocols and create the momentum that allows us the space so that we don't have to start and stop, then I know that this government's program, through as executed by these estimates, will be able to bring much relief to families, would allow businesses again to start to feel a little more confident, sir, about these circumstances. And once we can get a gradual resumption of travel back into the country, then I know that we will be able to recover much faster. And that is why we have put in place a number of very strategic initiatives to be able to transform a lot of the things that we are doing, sir, with respect to this process. But sir, as you know, and it's something that I recall in recent times, a lot of rapid debates of these things used to go on into the late of the night, and there used to be a lot of cursing and all kinds of things of all kinds of people, sir. And you know, sir, that that is not in my nature by any stretch of imagination. And I want to say substantively, sir, that this exercise will continue even after the appropriation bill is passed today. The Ministry of Finance, sir, will continue to work with all of the ministries, sir, to ensure that all of the issues surrounding execution of projects, sir, that we work through very tightly to ensure execution, or to assure execution, because it is at that stage, sir, we are now at that stage where every day matters, sir. What we do every day in each ministry, in each department, sir, matters, because it will have a significant impact on the lives of Barbadians. And therefore the posture, sir, of the Ministry of Finance is a very simple one. We will make the provisions as we have indicated here. We will monitor, sir, to ensure that that execution rate is enhanced in a way that perhaps has not been done before. And we will work certainly with the ministry and the stakeholders to ensure that if there are issues to be resolved, that where appropriate, through our monitoring, and we recognize that we have to make adjustments, then we will make adjustments. But the mission here, sir, is simply this: we have to keep this country afloat. And this government, sir, continues to do so in a way, as I said earlier, that may appear seamless, but there are many officers across government working certainly with the members of the cabinet to be able to ensure that the response times with respect to what we need to do can be met, so that the lives of ordinary Barbadians do not have to suffer any further. The truth is, sir, government is committed to the reform process and the transformation process. And it really lies in how quickly we can execute a number of those reforms, sir, that will make the difference in the way that the government can respond. So I know a number of persons are hurting. We have made provisions, sir, with respect to a number of the social protection measures in these estimates. And I know that once both are executed, sir, that within short order, once we get the vaccines to arrive, and certainly, as you know, that in of itself is another story. But the reality is, once we can get our citizens and residents vaccinated, sir, maintain a certain level of economic activity, then I know that the $2 billion, sir, that has been identified in these estimates as the loss of economic activity in the last year, we do not want that to get any larger, sir. And therefore, the protocols have to be followed, sir, by all Barbadians and all residents and those who may visit us, which allows us, sir, to be able to stem the tide with respect to that and to start to build back, sir, in a much better way. And the reality is, it will not end with this process, but we will continue, sir, to work with the ministries to reorient where appropriate expenditures that puts the best possible opportunity, sir, for there to be greater economic activity. We will continue to make the provision, sir, with respect to the public health posture, and I'm happy that we've been able, sir, to identify in these estimates Program 366, sir, the National Crisis Management Program, which indicates the major expenditures as it relates to COVID-19 for the first time. And therefore, whilst we had provisions as we started last April 1st, sir, with the Household Survival Program and the increase in welfare and the provisions later, sir, directly to QEH as well as within the Ministry of Health, that sub-program is now identified here clearly, sir, within these estimates, which just, as I said, sir, captures the majority of the expenditure as it relates to COVID-19. And the truth is, sir, we had to borrow money last year that we didn't intend to borrow simply because we had to make up the difference with respect to the loss in revenue, whilst maintaining, sir, the same level of expenditure, so that Barbadians, whilst going through the most extraordinary financial impact of their lives, did not necessarily, sir, see, notwithstanding the fact that government officers had to shift with respect to the hours of operations and the like, that the government was still able, sir, to provide a full program of services, whilst amended, admittedly, to the public of Barbados. And I really do thank some of the very key initiatives to enhance the revenue collection. And I want to take this opportunity, sir, to impress upon Barbadians that the government will continue to make it easier for you to pay the government. And as you know, sir, we passed the National Payment System Bill a couple of weeks ago, which is intended, sir, to build up an ecosystem that allows not just people to pay government easily, but also transact business within the context of the private sector. And that is critically important, sir, right now in a COVID environment, simply because if we have to go back into any type of lockdown in the future, then it is my expectation, sir, that rather than seeing businesses being closed fully, and whilst they may be closed physically, sir, we will have the infrastructure in place that would allow businesses to operate digitally and enhance more delivery services such that persons can still continue to be employed and the businesses can still continue to operate, but Barbadians will not need to go through that type of adjustment. Now, that may not be appropriate for every business, but it is certainly the government's intention to ensure that we are ready and capable for that type of service so that we can avoid, sir, the kind of disruption that we have seen certainly last month and certainly last year. But it is up to us, sir, the citizens of the country, to take advantage of the fact that the government is leading the way with respect to the digitization process of the payments, and therefore we must change some of our habits in order to ensure that we can protect ourselves, sir, going forward. But I want to urge Barbadians to take advantage, sir, of those opportunities, because more and more will come on stream, not just for government, but certainly within the context of the private sector. And therefore I want to challenge the private sector where possible to ensure that they build their own internal level of resilience, sir, by actively looking at those types of systems, so that in the event, and the truth is, whether we have to go back into lockdown or not, these are some of the initiatives, sir, that I would love to see the private sector start to roll out, and that citizens, recognizing that whilst the Ministry of Finance would love to see people traversing all over the country in a normal way, because then I know that we'll be back to normal and revenues will return. What I would love to see, sir, is much more efficiency with respect to these processes, and I know that that in of itself, sir, will generate additional economic activity, additional jobs, and therefore give a clearer sense as to where the economy is likely to go. But, sir, these estimates before this chamber, and I've heard some interesting commentary, because one of the things, sir, that I know is that unless you are rooted in some kind of philosophy, sir, in the way that you govern, then you would find this country would have found itself, sir, in a situation where it may have been ungovernable. And you know, sir, that we set out a clear set of rules, guidelines, if you like, sir, under our Covenant of Hope some 5 years ago for what we will do with respect to expenditure. And the truth and the fact is that I am happy to report to this chamber that what we espouse under the Covenant of Hope, sir, actually is demonstrated and has been demonstrated, not just in these estimates, but the ones that we've been able to lay in this chamber before now. But it is critically important in these circumstances why those principles matter, sir. And therefore, it was almost as if, sir, 5 years ago when we all signed up for that it was almost as if we were looking forward without understanding that those very principles, sir, as exposed in the Covenant of Hope, are actually required today. And I'm happy to be part of a government, sir, that understands the principles around what public finance should do for people. And I say to Barbadians that rest assured, the Barbados Labour Party will bring the economy back. We are asking you now to look out for your interests with respect to adhering to the protocols that gives us the opportunity to bring the economy back much faster or sooner, so that you can provide, sir, for your family without having to make reference to whether it's a politician or any NGO, as most Barbadians are accustomed to, sir, and that we can recover that $2 billion as quickly as possible, and then add on top of that, sir, with the reforms that we are putting through, which would allow us to be able to accelerate the recovery in a way that is much more inclusive. And therefore, the confidence that was placed in us almost 3 years ago, sir, I believe that the perception that we've made it look easy, sir, in of itself should signal to ordinary Barbadians that your government, sir, your government is working on behalf of you and your family, that we've made provisions to ensure that nobody's left out of this scenario, and that the future of this country now relies on how each of us would decide how to go about our daily lives with respect to the adherence to the protocol. Now, we can only, sir, and I say this to Barbadians, we are planning this recovery and counting on you. And when we say that this is a people-centered budget, this is a people-centered response, it really relies on every single Barbadian, sir, playing their part in order to be able to get us out of this. And the reality is, sir, when you really think about the management of an economy, it really is predicated on people doing a series of random things every day, for the most part, sir. Whether you stop and get something at the shop, or you just happen to be landing with friends, sir, you may be on your way home from work, you might just up and decide, as we normally do, sir, you just feel it leaving home and going for a drive on a Sunday evening. Those are things that we have grown accustomed to. But it is those very random things, sir, that on a Sunday evening, you might leave home, drive, you might end up somewhere, sir, and get some ice cream by some fast food restaurant and just watch the sunset. These are the things, sir, that are what you would call desirable, because you know that you've already covered your bills and all those kinds of things. And I know that right now, a lot of people, sir, are unable to do that because of the kind of financial strain that they're under. But I say to those persons who are worried tonight, sir, about their bills, their rent, their mortgages, and those things, sir, that in very short order, sir, we'll be able to announce more specifics to the country in relation to the settlement of a framework for a number of those things. But the reality is this government is working very hard, sir, to be able to ensure that ordinary Barbadians can feel that sense of pride again, that the very simple things that we used to take for granted prior to COVID, sir, that we can all enjoy once again. And I say that knowing, sir, that once families, sir, can start to do those very simple and basic things again, and I look forward to seeing that happening, sir, every day of the week, but certainly on weekends as people would typically do, then I know that this path that we are on is the right path to be able to bring not just the economy back, but to bring back a sense of pride, sir, and confidence with respect to people's ability to be able to support themselves. And I know that right now a lot of people are hurting. And we have put a number of programs which will be executed, and we have an opportunity to discuss some of it when we do the supplementary. But the reality is, sir, is that how we spend money and when we spend money is going to make the substantive difference, sir, with respect to the acceleration of the recovery of this process. And so, sir, I am not going to detain the House much further. I am happy to be here at this stage, really to commend this process to the Honorable Chamber, and I once again want to thank the officers in the ministry, sir, for putting us in a position to do this. It has not been easy, and the Ministry of Finance, sir, will continue to ensure that we can make the appropriate provisions as indicated in these estimates, but stand ready, sir, to either augment, sir, where required, or make minor adjustments to be able to ensure that we first and foremost, sir, provide the necessary social protection for ordinary Barbadians, cover the health expenditures that are required to get us through this COVID-19 pandemic, and then obviously, sir, ensure that we can engineer sufficient economic growth in this country, that jobs can return as quickly as possible, and that average Barbadians can support themselves and their families. And so, sir, I promise to be brief, and so with those few words, sir, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself in standing Finance Committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This House is now in standing Finance Committee.
Madam Chair, Head 30, Office of the Attorney General, as amended, in the amount of $69,424,569.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Head 30 stand par as amended.
Question is that Head 30, as amended, stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 39, Ministry of International Business and Industry, as amended, in the amount of $22,753,200. $932.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 39 stand par as amended.
Question is that head 39 as amended stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 87, Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, in the amount of $317,502,359.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 87 stand par as amended.
Question is that head 87 as amended stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to his.
Madam Chair, Clause 2 as amended.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 as amended stand par.
Question is that clause 2 as amended stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Schedule as amended.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that the schedule as amended stand par.
Question is that the schedule as amended
Be the schedule.
be the schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report. Yes.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill as amended in committee.
Question is that I do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee as amended. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill as amended in committee.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Appropriation Act 2021.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Order number 3, sir. In the name of the acting leader of the House, to move that the House resolve itself into standing finance committee to consider the grant of sums of money for the service of this island.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House resolve itself into standing finance committee to consider the grant of sums of money for the service of the island.
The question is that the speaker do not leave the House.
Leave the chair, not the House.
Chair, leave the chair.
I thought he said House, sir. The question is that the speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into standing finance committee. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
This House is now in standing finance committee.